Hey, real quick, unless you grew up with Primavera or own Oracle stock, or maybe both, you probably wish your schedule was easy to understand and interact with. This is where Planera comes in. Planera is a modern CPM planning and scheduling platform built for construction teams. Real-time collaborative, visual, making it easy to plan work while staying powerful enough to manage complex schedules. There are better ways to plan, and Planera is one of them. Check it out. But Victor Muchiri, welcome to the podcast, man. How are you doing?
Did well, brother. How are you?
Good. Well, appreciate you making some time. Lars and I are pretty excited about this episode. I think you and I met at Blueprint a couple years ago, I believe.
That's right. Yeah, sunny Vegas. It was a good time. Good time.
That's right. So there's a number of reasons why I'm excited about this episode, but maybe a little background. I think what I've come to learn about your story is that it defines or it defies kind of easy kind of categorization. It's not really typical in terms of the industry. So you started in construction management at Ohio State, or the Ohio State, as you guys like to
That's
say.
right. That's right. That's right.
You worked in fintech for a bit, spent some time in venture capital, and then you carved out a role as entrepreneur in residence at a major GC, which was one of the things that you and I first talked about at Blueprint, because I was in an R&D role at HIT, and I was fascinated by this kind of entrepreneur in residence title. But I guess maybe to just kind of like summarize that, like your first construction job in the industry, how do you then end up going this kind of interesting route through these different kind of rabbit holes? Did you see this kind of roundabout career path
Not at
happening,
all.
or what was your thoughts?
Not at all. I had no idea. I had no idea. I didn't even know I was going to be in construction, to be honest. When I left high school going to college, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. So I went and declared as like biochem major at Ohio State. Ended up changing my major probably like five, six times. And then stumbled onto construction. My sophomore year, I took an intro to construction management course. I was like, okay, I could see myself doing this for a career. And that's when I finally got hooked. So that was good. Quite frankly, if I didn't find something by the end of my sophomore year, I was probably going to drop out and figure out something else. So glad I found something. And then, yeah, so when I did graduate, project engineer, doing stuff as most project engineers do, RFI submittals, going on site, meeting with subs, running OAC meetings. And I was like, I don't know that I want to do this for forever. And at the time, I was working at Barton Mallow, and Barton Mallow back then was about $1 billion company, so smaller than they are today. This was around 2016 or so. So I then left Barton Mallow to go work at Turner, so much larger general contractor, with the idea being that Turner's much larger. In theory, there should be more opportunities for me there, and it's true that there were. But again, so when I get to Turner, it's like there are more opportunities, more types of projects, more variety in that perspective. But I still didn't feel like I found my home yet. Like was starting to realize that I love construction, but I didn't love being out on the site, didn't love calling subcontractors all day, didn't love being in the mud, so to speak. But at Turner, they had this thing back then. I don't know if they still do, because like the stair ladder or surf step or whatever it was, and it basically like charts out every level in the organization. So level one, level two, level three, all the way to like level eight, and then VP. And then underneath those levels, they showed all the titles that were underneath there. So if you're level one, you're like a field engineer. Level two, assistant engineer, assistant superintendent, whatever it is, and so on and so forth. And at first, I was like, great, like here's the menu of options for the rest of my career. Like, go choose what I want, and I can just go do that for like the next 20 years. Until about 3 months later, and I had a meeting, and it's like you realize, yes, those are all the titles are available, but not all of them are available in your business unit. And so it's like, oh, well, I don't really want to move across the country for Turner. And so that's when I realized, yeah, I was like, Turner's great, construction's great, but I don't know that that's it. And I had a couple other experiences out in the field. Worked at a data center for Meta out in Ohio. And this is when I really got to see, because my first job was like an interiors job for a Fortune 500 company doing like tenant improvement stuff, probably like a 20 million TI job, which is pretty large for a TI job. But then my next job was working on a data center, and the scale of those things is just so large. I don't think people appreciate just how big
No, so
those
big.
campuses are. And
Yep.
I was doing interior trades yet again, and then there was this guy, his name was Joe. Joe's like a year older than me. Amazing superintendent, but the man just loved concrete and steel. Loved it. And I was like, I will never love construction like that. I will never love concrete. I will never love steel. And then this guy, like, he literally got energized by talking about this stuff, looking at details, and I was like, yeah, like that's it. That was really the end. So to answer your question, I had no idea where I was going to end up, but through all those experiences, like, yes, there are many opportunities, but then when you see something or you see someone that truly loves what they're doing, it's like, yeah, maybe that's not it. Maybe that's not it for me.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating. And I think, one of the things I didn't mention was You also write on Substack, and
Yeah.
what I appreciate about some of your topics on Substack is you're kind of slaughtering some of the sacred cows in the industry with some of your topics, and I think it speaks to maybe some of your perspective that you've picked up along the way in terms of these different kind of industry angles that you've gained, and now you're kind of running growth at Build Vision. Um, I guess maybe spending a little time early in your career as you kind of realized that maybe project delivery wasn't your passion. What was that internal battle like? Like, was it existential? Like, maybe I'm just not a good professional, or were you able to kind of have this meta perspective of like, I just need to find my niche?
Yeah, I think part of it honestly was a journey. Like it was existential for sure. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
it was a journey. It's like I didn't know what the answer was, and so going back to Turner, like before, so when I was still in project delivery, like I started reading a lot of business books. And it's like there's a whole other world out there that's like I could be exposed to. And again, you take a look at this stair ladder or whatever. It's like okay, if I ever want to do biz dev, I really need to understand like these core skills. So I need to go learn that and like go get good at that. If I ever want to do like cost analysis or be a cost analyst, cost manager, whatever, I need to go get good at like reading numbers and understanding financials. So then I started going and learning that stuff. And so that you pick up these skills along the way, and I think that's where it starts to become like, okay, if I'm good at this, I like this, but I don't want to do either of these things full time. Like, what kind of path forward makes sense for me to kind of create something? And then, quite frankly, I didn't get to answer that question until many years later. But you start to realize like something is different about what you're interested in compared to like what's available to you. And I would also say like my journey is it became existential at one point when I was leaving Turner, field ops, like project delivery, and I went to go work at their HQ. And so typically it was like a rotational program. You did it for a couple of years, and then you went back to the field, right? And the idea being like you'll learn corporate, and then it kind of puts you on a fast track to get like to a higher position in your career. But the problem with that is like you're taking a really big bet. It's like you're literally removing yourself from the thing that Turner's known for, building buildings, trying to do something else, and then bouncing right back in. And I got told by a leader, an executive, that like if I took this position, I would not be able to go back to the field. Like they wouldn't have be a home for me. And so at that point, it really became existential. It's like, do you really believe that the risk you're taking is going to be worth having a job? Quite frankly, it's like you could find something else,
No.
but and so yeah, I mean, it became existential from that regard because I had to make a bet that like what I'm interested in and what I think I could be good at long term is going to be better than following the traditional career path within project delivery or operations within a large contractor.
Yeah, because I think there's people, and I think I would put myself in that category. Like I've described myself as I was a PM for a number of years. I don't think I was a great PM. Like I think looking
Yeah, yeah,
back,
yeah.
like the things I appreciated about other PMs were the ones who could break down a structural detail and kind of understand its intricacies and understand risk just through looking at a schedule. Like I had to work really hard at that stuff. The stuff I enjoyed and I was good at was like the people side of it, the interpersonal dynamics, change management. But I didn't really understand that if you weren't good at the stuff that I thought were table stakes, that there were other options.
Yep.
And so, as you maybe came upon that, understanding, did you then start to look at other industries, and that's maybe the path that opened up in the fintech world and beyond?
A little bit. I think you do have to take a real honest look at like what you're good at. I think that's definitely true, which I did, right? Like that's part of the reason why during that existential moment I decided to go with the headquarters team. But it was more so like, am I willing to take a bet on myself? And I think that was a bigger question for me. It's like because at the time I was an analyst, and then I went to go work at a scale up. So they just raised their Series D, so a fairly large company. They were getting ready to IPO. We obviously didn't know this at the time. Um, but they did, and then like they were growing massively, and they needed someone with some of the expertise that I had at Turner. But then, can I go build a new program, or can I build a new product around it? And like, that was a bet I was going to take on myself. Is like, do I think I'm actually good enough to go do this on my own with no support, quote unquote? Because again, I was the first hire in this department. So I think that was it. But then, yeah, to the earlier story I shared, it's like similar to you, Steven. It's like I could do those things, like what you're asking of me as a like an operations manager, but like I'm not the guy that's going to get an A plus on those grades. Like I will get the project done, but it's not going to be this smashing success that everyone. And so like, okay, if that's going to be true, and I personally like I want to win, and so like if I'm going to win, it's going to be in something else. And so if I'm that's not the path, then let's go figure out what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious for your perspective, Lars, because you've run a GC business. What would you do with Victor and I? Like, if so, we're like mediocre kind of at project delivery, but in theory, kind of obviously have some skills. Like, what would you do with us?
Yeah, no doubt. I would get you out of like ops, high detail stuff. You guys probably aren't living your like zone of genius, your perfect design in like high detail, high stress environments. And the thing is that there are people for those roles that are out there that are
Mm.
perfectly designed to handle that. I mean, Victor's talking about the guy that's like waking up every morning excited about concrete and steel details. Like that those are the dream employees for field ops for construction companies. And construction companies should be finding them rather than hiring, you know, a friend or
Right.
someone and say, "Hey, you can do this," you know? And
Yeah.
it's like, guess what? You can do it, and you guys did do it, but I'm guessing there was like internal conflict. There was probably stupid amounts of stress. And to, to your point, Victor, it's like I'm having an existential crisis. Like, did I just waste 5, 6, 8, 10 years of my life doing this thing that I'm sort of like, I don't know if I'm like really, really good at this. I mean, I can do it, but I don't. It's
Right.
messy. I mean, here's the deal. I just because I run a company doesn't mean I'm a good project manager.
Yeah.
I
Different
mean,
skill
that's a
set.
fact. It's a different skill set.
Yeah.
It's a different skill set. But I, so does that answer your question, Stephen? I got about a
Yeah, it
thousand
does.
questions for Victor though. So
No, I mean, I think you nailed it. I mean, I think that is a shift, though, I think in mindset, and it takes some leadership's ability to understand in an industry that is so kind of cookie cutter in terms of where people sit, that to build flexibility into your organizational
it,
structure.
it takes curiosity of the organization to say, why am I having maybe similar problems over and over? Or I thought this person interviewed really well for this position. They're not able to do it. Is that the person or is that me? Right? Is that the organization that failed? So that's where I think it comes down to leadership. It comes down to curiosity and not making the same mistake twice.
I
Yeah.
would also say that I think there's a lot of different ways to lead ops, lead the field, right? And I think early in your career, you kind of attempt to orient yourself to what you see around you. And then you get to a point in your maturity and you realize, oh, I can actually do this kind of my way and still be successful. And so I think that's another element too, or another layer.
So what's interesting is if you think about big, 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 big companies, do they want it done that individual's way, or do they want it done the company way?
Right.
So that
Right.
typically the people that stay are the ones that do it exactly the company way because they don't deviate and they're perfectly designed to follow exactly the company way. Which
Yeah.
again, there's there's a time and place for that. There's a
Yeah.
time and place for that.
I mean, to that point, like those companies have been in business for forever. Like they have a process, they have a
One
method.
hundred percent.
But there's only one way to do it. Like every company, you go down the list, even though they're mega companies, they're not the same company. They just have different ways of doing it.
So I have to ask the question, Victor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Talk to me about the title, entrepreneur in residence.
Yeah.
What was the goal? What did they find you? Did you find them? Did they create that title? Did you create that title? What was the goal?
So that
And
title, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, and the reason is that I want to, Stephen, I want to pull on this for a
Mm.
while here because I think it's
Hmm.
fascinating.
Hmm.
Yeah, so the short of it is it's a made up title. They made it up for me.
Okay.
So I reached out to them. It's like,
So
hey,
they saw something in you. Love
a
it.
little bit, a little bit. So caveat with like, I worked at Barton Mallow early in my career and I did a decent job. Yes, I wasn't great
I
at it.
did a
and
decent,
I did like,
decent job.
but good enough that like when I
You
came
did
knocking
great.
again
You did
years
great.
later, it was fine. Yeah, 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 yeah. And so I'd reached out to them. It's like, hey, like I would love to come back to the construction industry. Would love to do it in a very different way. That like obviously not in operations. Like I don't see myself in like BD or like VDC or something like that. Like I wanted to
Yeah.
do something more entrepreneurial to help the industry. And so they said, okay, like let's have conversations. And so we did. And part of that job, the job itself, I'll describe it and then kind of go back to the title. So the job was basically like, can you find products, services, or companies that you can create on the company's behalf to increase the value of the company, the organization? So specifically for Barton Mallow. And so the idea is like, and I do want to go back to the sacred cow, Stephen, because I think this is one of them. Of like construction companies do things a certain way, but I think that limits their ability to actually grow or have higher profit margins. And so the question is like, okay, well, let's get creative. Can we get curious about what else exists. And so that was the job. It was like, I thought, based off the skills that I accomplished and gathered by working at a startup, by working in venture and doing these other things, that if we are as an industry going to move forward, we need to be able to ask some of those thornier questions of like, what actually could be created from a product perspective? How should we be thinking about the services we deliver to our clients and to our employees? Like maybe they are net new things that we could think about. And so through that process, of okay, well, it's hard to even put a title on all that. And so they made up the title of entrepreneur in residence to kind of encapsulate like someone that's curious, someone that wants to build something, someone that wants to build a business around it. Because it's not just ideas on a whiteboard, then you have to go execute it. So that's kind of how the job came out to be. It's like, okay, like I want to go do something. This is what it looks like. I think part of that is also being pretty confident in yourself and that you have something to offer to the world, but this has to be like what it is. Like you have to create, because like there's no job. I shouldn't say that. It's very hard to find a job that's titled entrepreneur in residence or EIR that exists out there. You kind of have to go make it yourself, and you have to go convince someone that they should exist. And that's kind of how it happened. Like I convinced a few people within the organization to like hire me for this role.
So let me keep going on this. So how did your peers perceive you in the organization?
Peers as in like my age mates, or peers as in like the people, like my colleagues, my actual like working teams?
People within the company,
Uh,
your age and seniors, or more senior in the
yeah.
organization.
My age was interesting because like some of the folks that I didn't know them well, but I knew from like my internship. I interned there, so like from my internship class, like Barton Mallow has like a 97% like rate. If you get an internship, you will
Sure.
work there, right?
Yeah.
And so those people were just kind of moving up and up and up. And so when I came back, it was like, oh, like great to see you, blah blah blah. But then it's like, what are you doing? Like, what is this role? Like, no one, like, what are you talking about? So there were some curiosity, some questions there. I think from a leadership perspective, from an executive perspective, it was like, oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know we were doing that. Was generally the kind of vibe. But then once you explain to them, it's like, well, this is why we're doing it. It's like, well, our profit margins like last year were this. Like, what if we had a business line that could create a bunch of different companies or products and we sold them, and therefore our profit margin would be higher? Would that be good for the organization? Yes or no? It's like, well, obviously. So it's like, okay, well, like that's what I'm here to do. Like that's the purpose of being here. So it's easier to have some of those conversations with executives. But quite frankly, it's still a bit of a weird title. It's still a weird job to have within the construction industry, let alone one company. And so I think Barton Mallow like obviously showed that they're willing to put their foot forward and try to ask those questions. But
It's I give them credit,
yeah,
right? Because in an industry that I think is subject to not changing due to this idea on, listen, it's working, don't touch it,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Or 2, 3, 4 year long projects. We're not switching boats halfway through, right? So it's like just don't touch the machine, right? Keep it going. But to then say no, they had the perspective to say no. We are actually really curious in how to increase our enterprise value.
yeah,
And that jumps out at me as there were probably some pretty dynamic leaders in that organization that saw what real value is in a construction industry, and it was and taking a fresh perspective on things. And in bold statement here, and Steve and I have talked about this, but with how fast everything is moving right now, if every company doesn't have an EIR right now, they're going to be left behind.
yeah.
They
Should.
they are going. They're stuck. They're stuck. They have to be repositioning right
Yeah.
now.
I don't know if I
You don't
agree. I
agree?
agree with the
That's
concept,
fine.
Lars, but I think like because I sat in a similar role with an R&D title. One of the challenges that I came to understand was I think an analogy of or a way of describing I think the construction industry, specifically the GC side of the business, is it's a factory that creates a widget, and the widget is project delivery, and rarely do you walk into a factory and say, "Do you guys want to remake your business?" Like that
Yeah.
that
Fair.
that factory, that operations manager doesn't have the context for remaking their business in a commodity world.
100%. I agree with that. What I'm saying is, with how much technology and AI is sort of convening right now on project delivery, on data, on information, on how on literally the stresses that we all experience in like managing a project. It's like, how can we leverage all of this to reimagine what a day in the life of, in the construction industry looks like? And that's where I believe if we're not saying this can be better, this is getting better, this is getting easier, this is getting more accurate, it's getting all these things, all positives, and that's the opportunity missed. That's what I'm saying. And because I believe, an EIR to increase enterprise value is like, okay, that's many things. Sure, it's balance sheet, right? It's P&L, but it's also like culture, right? It's also access to information. It's also like, just employee experience, right? And that's what I see, right? Because typically when that factory worker is in the line doing the same thing every day, do you think he or she ever has the opportunity to think outside the box?
Yeah.
Or
it's not their mandate.
I was just gonna say, or are they ever asked like, "Hey, what stupid rule can we kill today to actually like make this better for you?" And honestly, if leaders ask that question, they're gonna be like, "Here's 13 things that would like this would be amazing if we could do."
But I think the question for you, Victor, is like you've sat in that role. You've sat in a lot of
Yeah,
different roles.
yeah.
As you look over the next 5, 10 years, who are the people in the industry? Who are the stakeholders? Who are the entities that are best positioned to action kind of that idea from Lars?
Yeah, I mean, one, I'd say shameless plug to Bard Mello. I think great company. A little too Midwestern that they're a little bashful, but it's a great company. They're doing great things there.
That's cool.
So I think from an organization that there's some lessons learned there. I think I'd agree with both of your points, though. I think that there's, whether the title is entrepreneur in residence or not, the lesson learned to be is like there should be someone, some group, some entity within the organization thinking about the future, thinking about like what could be true and challenging and asking those questions. Like 100% agree with that. And so I think like what are the stakeholders I think in the future that's going to be really interesting are going to be the CFO needs to be brought on board and like with the idea that there are different ways to handle, different ways to build a enduring business. I guess take a step back, like there's a general philosophy out there is like you need rock stars and superstars within your company. Like the rock stars are people that are going to be like, let's challenge this, like let's go shoot for the moon, like let's go like 0 to 100 in like 10 days kind of thing. And then you have the people that are like really steady, the people that keep the lights on, that clock in, clock out. And I don't mean in a bad way, but like they know what they do, they're damn good at it. Like they're not looking
They're factory
for the next
workers.
thing. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
just great. Like and you need
They
both of
grind.
them.
You do.
You do. In order to have like a long, enduring, sustaining business, you need both those people. And so going back to your question, Steve, it's like who are the stakeholders? Like, well, you need a good mix of both of them in order to go into the next 5, 10 years. Because you need people that are going to keep the lights on. If everyone's like taking moonshots, there's no business between the next 5 years. So
Yeah.
you do need a healthy blend between the two. But naturally, that means there's going to be tension. And so like, where do you relieve some of that tension? Where do you not? So I led with the CFO. I think the CFO is someone that should be really steady, but also curious about like what other types of businesses out there in the world, not in construction. Like what do they look like? What are their margin profiles? What are the business lines that they have? How are they, like a good example? So there's like the longest tenured company, the longest existing single company that's been privately owned is like in Japan, and the company started in like the year 600 and like 60 something. And I was like, it's crazy. And it's like, what have they done really, really well? Like, what can we learn from them? You think about companies like Sony or Nintendo that have changed their business models tons of times. You think about companies like GE that have done it. So I think the CFO, just because they look at so much from an enterprise perspective, is a good one. I think operations leaders, top down and bottoms up, quite frankly, operations leaders at the front line truly like understand what's happening on site. How's that affecting team morale? What's actually going on with the client? Like those really matter in order to keep the business moving. I think they need to be brought on board. I think those are the first two I would say. There's other people, like depending on what kind of things you're looking for. But from my perspective, I think the biggest challenge for large enterprise contractors called like ENR 250 and above is going to be like margin pressure over the next 5 to 10 years. Because I think different contractors, you start to see kind of all of them going in different directions. Like they're making their bets now. Like we won't see the trees, but everyone's planting their seeds now, and we'll see over the next 5 to 10 years. And so I think you need really good alignment from an organization standpoint of like, what do we actually want to be? Are we going to be a builder? Are we going to be a construction company? Are we going to be a service provider to our clients, whatever they need from us? Like those are the questions you should be asking internally to then determine in 5 to 10 years, like what kind of organization will you be? And there's no wrong or right answer, but you need clarity. You need to make those decisions.
Did we lose?
Yeah, I think we lost Lars. I think he's on mute.
No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Steven's on
Sorry.
mute. Sorry. Okay.
I was saying, I think that it's spot on. I think your point about the CFO being a critical kind of piece of the innovation equation is really good. I think so often the directors of innovation, report into a CFO, and I think if we were to use your kind of rock star and maybe the rough analogy you use, Lars, as a factory worker,
Yeah.
like I think if you look at the dichotomy between those two, I think actually a lot of C suites are made up, and maybe this is a little controversial, but like a lot of C suites are made up with factory worker kind of mentality of like keep the machine running, keep the widget going,
Again,
and not
don't
necessarily,
touch my spreadsheet from 1987
yeah,
It's
that
worked
that
since then.
has that had that
right,
it's worked since then. In fact, it's all I
right.
know.
Yeah.
Oh,
But I
now
think
it
the
gets
question
scary.
has to be like, can these giant organizations make these really big shifts? And
I don't
my
think you have a
thesis is like
choice.
that's going to be really hard.
They, they don't have a choice. That's my point. Like if you're not reimagining and reinventing,
Yeah.
you will miss the boat.
Yeah. I guess I would go back to like what I said. It's like you just have to decide like, are we going to be the best builder out there and like really focus on operations? Like, are we going to be the best service provider to our clients? Like, there's many other flavors in between. Like, what kind of company will you be? And again, you just need to make a decision. I think getting caught in this like no man's land is where it gets really dangerous. Where you try to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Yeah, I don't know. I tend to agree with everything you just said too. It's going to be really hard. It's going to be really hard.
Hey, really quick, there's a lot of noise right now around AI in construction. And if you've listened to the show, I am generally pretty skeptical around any AI that is not focused on leveling up you, the individual. What I appreciate about Trunk Tools is how they're intentionally building human centric tools. Their focus is on AI that supports the craft and takes the busy work out of your day and helps experienced builders spend more time building. One fact that kind of blew my mind. Did you know that workers on average spend 5.5 hours per week just looking for project data or information out of a typical work week? That's bonkers. I think we can all agree. And if you'd like to learn more about the tool and how Trunk Tools can help you reduce that time, look for the link in the description to visit their website and book a demo.
What do you think is, because I think one of my lessons learned from maybe that time in my life was I think you need an organization like a function, and you need leads who are the tip of the spear in driving some conversations around innovation. But like the main thing has to be driving culture of innovation at at a project level all the way through org, right?
Yeah.
And does that line up with your kind of exit thoughts as you've gone through the cycles?
Yeah, I think so, but I would caveat with like the idea of innovation. I think is historically in construction, it's really just been around like piloting net new software, or new technologies, new robotics, whatever it is. But I think the culture of innovation is one that's like we should just challenge everything. We should challenge like why are we doing this? Can this be done better? Et cetera, et cetera. So I think that is a healthy approach to have within some of these organizations in this industry. And I think where you really see these play out, and going back to the 5 to 10 years, is going to be, and quite frankly even longer, is going to be like from a business model perspective, like where do contractors, especially on the large side, like make most of their money? It's like historically been in GC fees and like the fees on their projects, and we see different shifts. It's like okay, like contractors start to self-perform because there's more margin there. It's like that, then you saw the whole wave. Then contractors can do insurance and CSIPs and SDI. Then you saw a bunch of those. Like they're starting to tack on different ways for them to make money because they're getting compressed on the CM fee side because everyone's kind of competing for the same job. I think the culture of innovation is going to be the one that drives like what else can we do. So you're starting to see more prefab. That'll be really interesting. You're starting to see more procurement. That's going to be really interesting. You're starting to see all these other things. And again, I think to me, that's a culture of innovation showing up from a business model perspective. Is like how do we make sure we will stay around for the next couple hundred years besides just building buildings. So yeah, I think the culture of innovation is more important than just let's go try out the best software out there than the hot new shiny thing.
Yeah.
So say the three of us,
Yeah.
start a GC business over the weekend. You're the CEO, obviously. Walk us through what is like what's the business model of this GC business that we just started? Like any unique
No
takes that we
baggage.
would build up?
No baggage.
Fresh start.
Yeah, no
No
baggage.
baggage.
Man, it. I would say the first question, like, well, what kind of business? Like, what's our end goal? Are we trying to create like the next mega company, or are we just trying to create like something that gives us a bunch of cash and we just live off the dividends for forever? Because that determines a ton of.
Yeah.
But I think
I
if
think it's
we're
sustainable growth. I mean, just to put some parameters around, I think it's sustainable growth. I think it's, appropriate leveraging of technology to
yeah,
kind of build some durability of the business. But yeah, run with that wherever you want to go.
I would say what I would do is I would build a business that self-performs as many scopes as I possibly could. I would embed as much technology within each of those scopes. So that would mean buying a technology and then going buying a subcontractor that does that, embedding that within the company so that I could go get electrical, mechanical, drywall, concrete. And you see a bunch of robotics companies in those spaces that are adding a lot of efficiencies. I would go do that. I would be as tech forward as possible from an operations standpoint because I think there's going to be a lot of efficiency gains. Plus, against the backdrop of like fewer and fewer people getting into the industry, you're going to have a lot of pressure from a labor perspective. So I think that's interesting. I would also think about like who am I serving at the end of the day? Like you get business, you get projects from clients who need something. So like you need to be really dialed into like how best to serve them. So whatever that means. Again, I don't think that we need to go take them out to like ski trips in Aspen all the time, but I think there's other ways we could serve these individuals, these entities in a way that's different. Like we can deliver that building for you on time and on schedule. Or under budget. So I think that's what I would do. I would do a lot of self-perform work. I would do a lot of robotics from that labor perspective to add a lot of efficiencies. I think the thing we haven't really talked about is AI. I think you should really rethink like what are people actually doing in their day job? There's a lot of tasks that people know, and like, but like, what are they actually delivering? Like, why am I doing this submittal? Like, you do the submittal to ensure that the right stuff gets installed by the right people in the right location. It's like, okay, like, can you use AI for that? It's like, I'm sure we could. So I would use a lot of AI to actually break down like what are we actually trying to accomplish instead of the tasks that we need to do, and then just go build software on top of that. So that's the kind of business I would build for those reasons. So I think at the end of the day, you're going to have sustainable growth because you're going to have decent margins. The decent margins will allow you to then kick off more cash, and so everyone will be fat and happy. And, call it 50 years now in the future.
We'll leave
That's a very
a
different business
GoFundMe.
than what you see today in the
Well,
market.
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we'll leave a GoFundMe link to sponsor this business. But
Start
also,
now. Start
you,
now.
you're you're like a British accent away from being invited to the next groundbreak to be kind of talk through the
The
future.
keynote.
Yeah.
It's funny. I've never actually been a groundbreak. I've never been a groundbreak.
I went for the first time last year, and I mean, it's a production. It was like
Yeah,
it was like going to a carnival. It was crazy.
I
It's
believe it.
cool though. I enjoyed it. I like that. I think there's a lot there in what you said. One of the things that I mean, pretty vertically integrated.
Yeah,
Self-perform, taking on MEP, kind of integrating AI by asking some key questions first. I think that's so huge because I think there's so many workflows where we assume a lot that we don't really need
100%.
to potentially perform.
Yeah. I think you'll see this
Large,
like more and more in the future, quite frankly. Like if you look at the acquisition by DataGrid, by Procore, I think that'll tell you kind of like where the sands are shifting to. Is like, do you
mm,
really need to go do these individual steps, or do you really need to think about from a workflow perspective, like what are you trying to accomplish and can use software to do that? And I think that's where you see the next unlock for a lot of these next generation companies. So again, like that's one domino, but it's clearly the trend. When you look at other industries, like they're a
yeah.
little bit ahead of us. Like that's clearly the trend of where the value is going to be in this industry.
I would have thought I would have been more intrigued if DataGrid was acquired by a big GC. Like I thought that would be the next big shift is you have more GCs acquiring some of these emerging technologies,
Yeah.
fully integrating them, closing them off, creating a very distinct model. Like I don't
Yeah.
know. I think that
I
could be a
think they
nice
should
shift.
do that. I think like AECOM buying Consigli is like a huge thing that I don't think enough people talk about. One, they get the wrong Consigli all the time, but like I think that to Stephen,
Yeah.
to your point, like that is something that I think should happen more because like what are your differentiators as a you talked about commodities, like what are your differentiators as a GC to your clients? Like a lot of people can build hospitals really, really well, right? But like, who else is going to do it better than you if you have all these embedded technologies in your business, or who else is going to do it at a higher margin? So therefore, you could have a lower fee. You could pass those savings on to the owner to do it for less money than your competitor. Like, you got to get really creative about how do you deliver outsized value to your clients and why you do it the way you do.
Yeah, 100%. And I think if you combine that kind of M&E activity with the ability to kind of not extract, extract seems negative, but capture the knowledge that's happening in your
100%.
frontline folks, you combine those two and you become pretty powerful.
Yeah.
I don't know, Lars, you have a business in this like category.
I do.
Are you already executing on all these strategies?
Um, Self performance one is interesting. We've definitely have leaned a little bit more forward in that category. The challenge when you're a smaller business is always though, how do you keep the guys busy? How do you
Yeah.
keep them busy? And without, I'd so vertically integrated is super sexy, right? Um, but you almost have to be doing it for others to keep them busy. But then, with how challenging labor is, um, you can almost create more problems for yourself,
Yeah.
right? And so I can tell you this year there will be some self performance on the GC side, 100%.
Yeah.
We've actually hired some key people who have that historical capability, and we are going to be curiously, one, we're going to say go, and then curiously monitoring it to say, okay, how can we put this at scale? And then I think it's okay now that we've tested it. What really are the trades that add the most value to who we are as a GC? So, yeah, I mean, honestly, there's some sound amazing, but then like mechanical, it's like, oh yeah, absolutely right. There's a service component. There's this, but then, well, what's the infrastructure?
Right.
Right? It's a much larger infrastructure than say, like, let's say painting, right? Pretty simple.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
Well, I wonder if at some point in the future, near future, you'll have some kind of funding model for a kind of an integrated business like this, right? Where it's not so much you start from scratch and you kind of win your way to the next month, but you have some runway. I mean, obviously, Katera in the past did
Yeah.
something similar, but
Well, so where I see a victory, a transition occurring are vertically integrated developers, GC, self-performers, that with their backlog, they can control starts on projects to the greatest extent possible, right? That then their labor becomes a strength because they can roll it to the next project, right? 2, 3, 4 projects, starts a year. That's all you need, and then next thing you know, you have incredible momentum,
Right.
and this wave just grows and grows. And think about all the fee capture across sub, GC, dev, promote. It's mind-boggling, the fee
Yeah.
capture there.
Yeah, I think I've got a lot of thoughts on this topic, so hopefully we can pause here. I think the self-perform piece is definitely interesting for a lot of reasons that I think everyone kind of understands. But I disagree a little bit on the backlog. I think backlog could be a double-edged sword depending on the kind of business you are. I think if you have a lot of self-performance, it could be the highs are going to be higher because if you have the backlog, to your point, Lars, you have the momentum, you know where the guys are going to go. You don't have to worry about finding work for them. You can bid the jobs at whatever percentage you want to bill it at. I think that's going to be great. I think the fee structure between like each of those layers is also going to be really interesting. But I think the challenge with backlog sometimes, like if I'm a traditional GC that's just like subbing out all my work, I now have obligations that if I can't find labor in the future, I won't be able to deliver on those projects. And now I have a sour relationship with my client, and I probably won't win the next job. And we know the best kind of jobs in construction are going to be the ones that are negotiated projects that never go out to the street. So you need to win over those clients. And I think that's where like backlog can sometimes be a dangerous thing, is like where you don't actually have the capability to go deliver the work that you were contractually obligated to. Like the one thing I'd say, but I think
And so what I'm hearing you say is you can better control the risk associated with that relationship when you do self-perform on the
yeah, I
backlog.
think the more you're vertically integrated, the more you can control
Yeah.
that. Right.
Yeah.
So that's where you think about insurance. This is where you start to think about like self-perform and some of the other things we talked about. I think if you can control the high-risk items in your project, I think that's where it becomes really interesting. And you see like other large GCs also have a development team for that reason, because they can control the sites, they can control like the relationships with the owners, et cetera, to the promote. Like they could do a bunch of that stuff and capture more of that if you take on some of that risk.
Well, and I think that also, we haven't really mentioned the idea that the current kind of GC model is really valuable because the current paradigm requires humans to be kind of the routers of information. And that's really what the GC is. If we look at what AI does well, it's kind of that. It's like, sifting through large kind of databases of data and then, creating different triggers so it flows in the right direction. I think that will challenge the value stream that GCs have leaned on for a lot of years. And
Yeah.
so there has to be other kind of categories of value creation for them to stay relevant.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think like 100% agree. I definitely agree with that. I think the other thing I would point to is going to be like Turner Construction, for example. Like people have a lot of opinions on Turner, but like I think they're playing a totally different game than a lot of large GCs are. And you see this in the way that they make their money. Like they recently announced FEC, which is like their equipment company, where it's like a rentals. And so like you can go rent equipment. Other large GCs
Oh,
do
yeah.
this.
Yeah.
But then you think about, okay, they have insurance brokers that they sell. They have
Yeah.
Source Blue. They have
Yeah.
equipment rentals. They have GC fees. So eventually they're going to get to a world where like it doesn't matter how much money they make on the CM fee because they have all these other business lines that
They're
gonna
not
make
making money there.
yeah,
Right?
exactly. So I think that's the kind of innovation. Like they're playing a different game. So like, how do you go into a meeting against a Turner where like it doesn't matter if you have 3% or like you'll knock it down to 2.5. When there's like, well, they'll just do it for 0 because you're gonna make it up on everything else on the back end.
So I want to be clear, listeners, because building a Turner construction is what takes over a century.
Yeah, like 116 years or something. So.
Yeah, no. Granted, there's some big guys up there. That clearly did it a lot quicker, but there is a huge market for the smaller general contractors too,
and growing,
Yeah.
right?
And growing.
And having played in that smaller GC space, and thankfully been successful. I just want. I don't want people to think, I have to do all these things to be a small GC.
Sure.
And you don't have to, right? You don't have to. But I think what's interesting is there are some nuggets to take away of this as you start or develop that small GC to make yourself, to add more value to the owner, to increase margin, to, give more knobs and levers to twist and pull and, to diversify your offering to the market. But
Well, and I would argue they're even better positioned because they have the agility and some less of baggage a little bit.
I appreciate you sharing that because, again, I think for every billion-dollar new construction hospital that's popping up, which is amazing, right? Or data center, the complexities and the scale is just massive, right? For every one of those, I don't know, there's 10,000 other ones that are a lot smaller, and then you can make a great living doing, right? And build.
100%.
And for me, money is interesting, but it's also about doing kick-ass projects with kick-ass people and building amazing relationships with the owner, but also with subs, right?
And your
so
team.
that when you do pick up that phone call, those subs show up. And so, yeah, you might be taking the owner to Vail, but guess what? You're going out to the desert with your subs and like riding in the dunes and just having a good old time, right? So,
yeah,
anyway.
I agree. I would actually caveat a lot of what we said and talked about. Like this actually doesn't apply to a lot of companies that aren't of a certain scale. I think there's lessons to be learned there, but yeah, 100%. It's like everyone's like trying to move up and take on these larger projects, which is leaving this void of like really
Quality.
good work. Yeah, 100%, 100%.
But what I appreciate about your perspective is working for some really kick-ass like larger companies, brands, everything. So seeing how they're responding in the market, but that's where if the little guys are paying attention, listening, they can capture some amazing things that can impact them, and again, just provide more success for their company, their culture, their workers, all the above.
Yeah.
The above.
So we're running out of time. I feel like we could do even a second hour with you, Victor. But
We can invite him back. That's what we do.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you back. You'll be our futurist. You might have to
Quarterly reviews.
Yeah,
Whatever you guys
we'll
want,
talk.
I'm always happy to come in.
But the two things I wanted to touch on before we go.
Sure.
One is like we've talked a little bit about AI in one of our previous chats. We've talked more about how we've integrated into our personal workflows. So one would just like to understand how you're using AI, and then two, we'll kind of talk about maybe advice to your former self. But what are you doing with AI?
There's like personal and professional. I'll start with the personal first. I think
Yeah.
one thing, so I like to read a very specific kind of genre and I like to watch a very specific kind of genre. So in the future...
Well, you got to tell us what that is, so you can't just...
Can't just tease it out like that.
Yeah.
I love reading. There's this artist or author called Jean Le Carre. He is a British spy from the Cold War, and he writes like British spy novels. He
Okay.
has some of the best movies you've ever watched. very boring for some people, but like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, for example,
Yeah.
phenomenal movie. That's kind of so like I love spy thrillers. So I think
Cool.
in the future, everyone will be able to make their own content like that. So I've been using AI to come up with like scripts, like what do I want to see, and then eventually you'll be able to make your own movies and shows. So
This
I'll just be
dude,
able
this guy.
to make my own stuff, and I'll just like I'll watch my own content in a way that's inspired by it. So that's one way I think about it. On the other side, like professionally, like I use it, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, for different things, Gemini. I think it's like a huge multiplier. Like it's a time saver. Like yes, it can help me write emails, but there's so much more. When I think about like research, when I think about thinking partners, like I beat up my own ideas a lot using like ChatGPT, for example. But when I need an editor for something, I use Claude. If I need deep research, I use Gemini. Like each of these models are different or have skills in different areas, and so I use it a lot in that world. I'm also like trying to build stuff. Like I would encourage everyone, if you have a problem that exists in your life and you think software can solve it, like go try to vibe code it.
Yeah.
Like go use one of these models and like just create something, describe it and tell it what you're doing. But you have to be really, really prescriptive. It's kind of like a kid you're trying to teach, and I don't have kids, but like it's like an intern maybe. It's like that. Like they're they have the capability, but they're not quite there yet. Like you got to coach it. I think
Just
that's
like an intern.
yeah. Like we've all been there. Like you think you're so
Love it.
smart, but anyway, we want to know.
Yeah.
But like that's how I use a lot of AI today. It's gonna be like creativity for sure. I think like building applications. Like I built a couple workflows today that have been useful in my job, in my career, and then also just like I don't know, whatever weird thing that you've always wanted to talk to someone about. And I don't mean like a therapy session. Just like hey, like what if I did this? Like would that work? Or like have other people done this in the world? So you literally have the world's intelligence in your pocket, and like you should be taking advantage of
It's
that
crazy.
every single day. Every single day.
Everything.
I use AI every single day.
Yeah.
I can't imagine
That's-
not doing it in the future. I can't. I truly can't.
All those use cases are really good. I mean, like even with the storm prep, like we got a storm coming this weekend, and I kind of walked it through my setup and just asked
Yeah.
like, what am I missing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was apparently a
Cool.
lot. So
I was gonna say, so what are you missing, Steve? It's like, oh
Water.
crap.
Yeah.
So
Canned
water,
goods. Yeah.
blankets, candles, fire starting. Oh wow, we're really screwed on it.
yeah, I like the vibe coding thing. I think even using like a Claude or a ChatGPT to actually develop the prompt, so to plug
Oh
that
yeah.
into a
Yeah.
level
Huge.
or something like that. Very cool. I like all of that. What so you've gone through the cycles that we've talked about. You've seen the industry from these different angles. A large part of our audience is up and coming, supers and PMs, and I think your message is going to resonate with a percentage of them, right? Which
Yeah.
who are maybe not super psyched about ops, but maybe still has a love and a passion for the industry, and is on the cusp of trying to figure out what those next steps are. What is maybe your message to that group?
One, I would say like this is probably the most exciting time ever to be in that position because the doors are
Mm.
opening to things that have never existed before. So like really lean into your curiosity, really lean into like what are your skills, what are your attributes, what do you care about, what gets you excited, and try to figure out like what it takes to be good at that. Like you got to figure out how to get good at some of those things. So I'd say the advice would be number one, appreciate where you are. Step one. Step two, do like a lot of self inventory, a lot of self reflection. Figure out like what makes you tick, what makes you like get out of bed and get excited about something. It sounds cheesy, but people say like I don't believe in finding your passion, but like there's a through line of like what are you good at, what does the business need, and like finding something in between there that kind of works really well. And the last thing I would say too is like there's lessons I learned from being a project engineer out in the field, like being on site, that like I never thought would be relevant, but come to be relevant many years later. So just enjoy the seat where you are, like embrace it, learn everything you can, soak it up, ask the questions, and who knows, maybe 5, 10, 15 years later to come back. Certainly the relationships will, but some of the lessons you learn will definitely come in handy. So I don't say embrace the suck, but like embrace the position you're in. You're there for a reason. Go do a good job. But definitely always go do a good job. But yeah, embrace it. Ask a lot of questions, learn, be very curious. I think that's the lesson I would teach everyone over the next 5 years. Be very curious about the world, about how things work. And I think like you have a generational defining opportunity right now to go determine how to best serve that. Go best serve your employer, yourself, your family, your community, whatever that means for you.
The industry.
I love that. What's your Substack name again, Victor?
It's called The Next Build. The Next Build.
Next book.
Yeah, I would say I would also encourage kind of an advice like go write. Like it is.
Yeah.
It's like some of the stuff you write about the first days are like really bad. Like that's doesn't matter. It's like it just forces you to get good at like identifying how do you think really well, and I think that's a good lesson. And then you put it out into the world and see what resonates. And so, My Substack is called The Next Build. I write about things that are interesting. I write about some of the sacred cows in the industry of like what I think maybe we should be doing or shouldn't be doing. So people can find me there. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter or whatever your preferred network is or platform is. And I encourage everyone to go write.
Yeah, I like that. I think if you've ever been frustrated with your organization, read some of Victor's work. It might be a bit cathartic.
It's also dense, so grab a coffee, grab a bourbon, whatever you
Yeah,
prefer.
you paint a positive picture. Lars, any final thoughts for us?
I got a question for Victor.
Yeah, hit me.
Bring it.
So, if it's not Division 3 or Division 4, what trades do get you excited out in the field?
What trades get me excited? Oh man, that's a good question. I think like there's a skill to the trades that I don't think people really appreciate. Like I've tried to do drywall in my own basement, and then I've seen someone in the field do it.
this is going to be amazing. Yeah.
Oh my god! Like some of those guys.
You're just like pushing piles of mud.
Oh
Like,
yeah, and it
I
looks.
thought this was going to be a lot easier.
Yeah, it's terrible. So I think most of like so Division 9 is going to be pretty good. I would say anything electrical, like yeah, I can rewire and outlet like some of that stuff, but like again, it's a true skill to do most of these trades. I think one thing I've never really quite ever seen, but like just sounds wild to me, is underwater welding. Like that seems kind of wild.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I would say like that would get me excited. In general, like welding is also pretty impressive. Like you're literally creating things that will stand the test of time. So yeah, Division 3 concrete doesn't get me out of bed. Division 5 a little bit. Drywall is just something I appreciate because I see it every day in my house. But so many other ones, man. It's such a skill. It's such a skill.
You know, it's
I
funny.
love that you asked like a little bit of a quiz. Like, do you know your CSI divisions?
Oh, yeah.
You have to. This is what I mean. Like, yeah, I mean, you go to school, you come in, you better know your CSI divisions.
That's right.
Imagine looking for specs and you don't know where to look. Like, you gotta know. You gotta know.
There was a time when I was like, I just want to be an earthwork contractor, right? And the reason is because I was doing a ton of medical work, and it was like all like level 5 finish, right?
Yeah.
And it's like someone would get in there with like a flashlight, like, and sort of go at an angle like 2 inches off the wall, and they're like, not quite, not quite flat. That's not level 5. Redo it, right? And I'm just like, does anyone do that for dirt? Like I think it's time for me to move to dirt. Like this is ridiculous. Like
That is
black light,
ridiculous.
like no.
Ramps, I think, are pretty hard in concrete, like flatness. Like, you can only have like
yeah.
half an inch
yeah.
over like so many feet. Like, that's really
yeah.
hard. Like, concrete flatness is hard. I mean, like, again, like, these are truly skilled trades. People look down on them. Like, these are people that know what they're doing. It's like an art to appreciate.
100%.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Victor, this has really lived up to all of my expectations and more. So thank you for taking some time with us, man.
Yeah, always happy, guys. Always
It's a
good.
pleasure. Thanks, bud.
Yeah, yeah.